Right, it's your Geordie Journos. This is a bit of an unusual setup, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know this place, yeah?
No.
Newcastle United Media Centre.
Yeah, so the media centre. I didn't do Eddie Howe's press conference, but I've come along to help me mate to flesh this video a little bit, because Jordan, of course, is having a day off. Well, he's not having a day off, but he's not doing the press conference.
I mean, press conference fatigue is a real issue these days. It was the 9th press conference in 2 weeks.
This was his Bromley. We just pushed him aside, let him have an Isak weekend off. That's what we did for Jordan this week. Yeah. So apologies if you're turning on this afternoon and hoping, oh, where's Jordan? He's not here. You've only got Dom and me instead to waffle on. Right, so I think basically we'll go into a little bit of thoughts. I think probably most people out there, if you're watching this, might well have already seen it. You might have seen the coach, you might have already watched Eddie, or at least listened to him. Quick summary of what we saw go on, and then we'll go into some of the deeper points of what he kind of meant behind it.
I think the big thing that came from it, or the standout thing, was the sort of openness of Miguel Almiron's potential departure. Eddie Howe basically shut it down after the Wolves game. He said, look, I've been preparing for this game, I know nothing. Take that with a pinch of salt, of course, but then today he said Miguel Almiron is still here, he will train today and will be part of the squad against Bournemouth on Saturday, but then did cast a bit of doubt over Miguel Almiron's long-term future. He said Miguel Almiron will play an important part until he leaves the club, and also there was a general receptiveness that Miguel Almiron could be departing in the near future, with a deal on the table for him to rejoin Atlanta United in the region of £10 million. Would expect that to go through, but also moving that on is Newcastle have a thin squad. We touched on it in our previous video, and Harvey Barnes is injured. Jacob Murphy's currently the starting right winger. You've got Anthony Gordon on the opposite side. There's not a glut of options out wide in terms of senior players. Miguel Almiron has a use in that regard, even though when he's got on the pitch his effectiveness has been up for debate. But it sounded like, based on what Eddie Howe was saying, again the PSR shackles continue to sort of stifle Newcastle in the transfer market. Doesn't sound like a replacement will necessarily be incoming, with Eddie Howe stressing that business decisions take precedent over football decisions.
I think they do sometimes. That might not be what everybody agrees with or wants to hear, but I think they have to take that sometimes. You're talking about getting potentially £10 million for a squad player, a squad fella who's
started one Premier League game, 31 next month.
If you get £10 million for him, it will be utter lunacy to turn down a bid like that. And Newcastle United are very big on the idea. Well, Eddie Howe was massive in the idea. Look, Minte was one of those. I don't think he was that bothered about losing Yankuba Minte that much. I think he was really affected by losing Elliot Anderson.
Yeah.
The amount of time and effort.
Mentioned again today, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
The amount of time and effort that he individually and his coaches put into moulding Elliot Anderson into the player that Nottingham Forest are now seeing the fruits of that labour for really hurt him. You could tell, I think, the way that he's spoken about it. And one thing that Newcastle United have got to do to make sure that they're not having the same conversation, or we're not talking about the same thing about Lewis Miley in 2 years' time, is because the most saleable assets in this stupid rules and stupid landscape of football at the moment is your most saleable assets are the ones that you produce yourselves, because they count as pure profit, as you all know out there. The stupid rules that we've had to learn in this process. If you don't want to have the same conversation about Lewis Miley in 2 years' time, they're going to have to start getting rid of players. Fringe players, and we all know that nobody wants to get rid of the main men, and I think we're kind of past all that now, despite what the national media narrative would be. There isn't really a sense that you get anywhere from this football club, coming from the dressing room, coming from the football club itself, that the big stars are the ones that are going to have to be sacrificed in order for the club to move forward. I don't really think that's a position the club are in. I think the finances naturally, as years of massive shortfalls drop off, things move in the right direction. And if you start to have a bit more of a sustainable transfer policy, which they seem to be moving towards, they've had to have that hard cut. They've had to almost say, right, we're going to have 18 months of nothing to get to a point where we can have something. Everybody has to do that. Sometimes you have to cut your cloth to suit, and that feels like what's been going on here. But unless they do that, and unless they start drip feeding the odd sale into boosting that PSR, I don't know how much Miguel Almiron adds to a PSR headroom. I don't know how much Kieran Trippier would have added last year, but I think it makes a difference, and it certainly would help And it means you don't have to make the hard decisions of saying, let's hawk Anthony Gordon out of every club going. Let's hawk Alexander Isak out of every club going. You don't have to do that if you've got your ducks in a row, your house in order, and that's what this Miguel Almiron deal is. Is it ideal from Newcastle United in a football perspective? No, it's far from ideal. I'm saying he hasn't had a massive impact this season, and he's a squad filler, and that's all true. But he's also a player that you might need from time to time. And if you're a manager, you're not going to want to seriously weaken yourself in that respect, considering you're fighting on three fronts. When I say fighting on three fronts, I'm not buying into all this title charge rubbish, not for me. I'm sorry. It's just lunacy. And I think actually talking...
You like that word?
I do. I think talking in that manner almost gives Newcastle... It perpetuates this beast, this rumour that grows about unrealistic expectations and stupidity and people going off on like the Geordie dreamers. I think you've got to be realistic. Liverpool have dropped 13 points all season. I'm going off on a tangent myself here. Okay. 13 points all season out of 60. And all of a sudden they're going to drop probably double that, and Newcastle is going to have to win every game virtually. It's not going to happen. Realistic, we've got to live in a real world as well as being dreamers at times, and I'm a dreamer as anybody else, but there's got to be a sense of realism to that. Where was I going? Do I even know?
Player sales, things like that.
Player sales. No, anyway, so they're fighting on three fronts. That's where I was. Yeah. So FA Cup's a realistic prospect if you keep getting decent draws and you have some luck with injuries. Luck with injuries and injury management's going to be key, as well as the Carabao Cup.
It's been good this season.
And it has been good, and they've got to touch wood, they've got to hope that it continues, because there's two players, I think, and I'm not going to name names, two players I think are actually irreplaceable, because they've not only... one of them transformed everything by making everybody around him better players, and is a very good player himself, and the other one's really taken hold of grasping the season.
You're dancing around.
It's Tonali and Isak, isn't it? Yes. They're the two. Yeah. And I love Bruno. Bruno's the main man to me, but I think Tonali, because he's allowed Bruno to become what he is so much more key at the moment in the way that Newcastle United play. He's the glue that's pulled the defence and the midfield back together. It's glued that gap that was there for 2.5 years, where three forwards were running up against Bournemouth.
Yeah.
You know, players running in on left backs, running in on centre halves. Yeah. He's glued that all together. So realistically, they're fighting on three fronts. You don't want to weaken yourself, but ultimately you have to roll the dice. And I said this on the last video. You've got to roll the dice at some point. You can't be a football club that just has what it holds all the time, because if they only have what they hold, they'll never improve. They have to improve. Miguel Almiron, realistically, Eddie Howe by his selection and the players that he's picked and the ones that he's turned to, has basically already decided that Miguel Almiron is not a player that he really wants to use. He only uses them if he absolutely has to. Yeah. If you can get 10 million for a player that the manager thinks that of, then you'd be silly not to accept it. That's why this one's even slightly different to going back to Trippier. Yeah. Trippier was starting in the team, but if we'd seen the financials on that Trippier deal, and I've seen somebody come in the comments this week and say Captain Hindsight, well, hindsight's irrelevant. Yeah. This was a football club who were looking at the figures and could see the football argument and still decided to go with the football argument and regretted it. They regretted it very soon after. Yeah. So this has got to be a decision where I think they've learned lessons, and they say, in a football sense, you keep Miguel Almiron, but realistically, do we want to still be having the same conversation and regretting not taking money for somebody that we'll get money for, and then we'll go again next summer and replace with somebody that we'll want and the manager wants? So
that's the general feeling around the club. I mean, speaking to people at the club, Kieran Trippier was used almost as a case study for someone who the club could have got money for, and I wouldn't say regretted not selling, but it was like, really in hindsight, we should have looked at that deal.
So what you're saying, it's very important we get these wordings right, because they don't regret that, they love the player.
Yeah.
And he's been an excellent player for Newcastle, and I wouldn't want to get rid of him in an ideal world.
No.
But they regretted the decisions in not getting rid of players, whether that be Trippier, whether that be Wilson, whether that be anybody that had sniffs of interest around. Because then what they had to do was they had to make the hardest decision I think Eddie Howe's had to make in a transfer sense, which was sanctioning that deal for Elliot Anderson to go to Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, it's either that or points deduction. Eddie, what do you want? You're manager of the football club, and it's obvious. It's probably a decision made above his head, if we're being honest as well. So, yeah, I think Kieran Trippier is used as almost a case study for, now you've got Miguel Almiron, an offer on the table, money for a player who is much further down the pecking order than Kieran Trippier was this time last year. And it's a similar sort of ballpark figure in terms of the money, and it's a no-brainer in a lot of ways in a business sense. And question I asked Eddie Howe, which was a question a lot of fans have been asking, and Eddie Howe couldn't really
We
quite
know the
answer.
answer to it though.
Yeah, quite answer it.
Yeah.
But it was obviously Newcastle had a lot of money to spend. I say it, a lot of money to spend. Eddie Howe said there was substantial amount of money available to spend on Mark Gay in the summer. That money wasn't spent. Why can't it be spent in this transfer window? And it's not as simple as that money was there, is what Eddie Howe was getting at with his response. That money was technically never there. Transfer budgets aren't really a thing in PSR.
It's like a fluid situation with
Exactly.
PSR.
So Newcastle could have got Mark Gay in the summer, but then before June 30th, which was the date Eddie Howe pointed to again, would have had to sell. Whether that be Miguel Almiron, whether that be Kieran Trippier in January, Callum Wilson.
Let's be brutally honest about this, Dom. It would have been more than Miguel Almiron.
Well, yeah.
If they'd signed Mark Gay, they would have had to been getting rid of a few.
That's what I'm saying. Miguel Almiron, Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson, players like that, and potentially even a bigger one.
Yes.
So that's why the money for Mark Gay was technically
It wasn't
never
there, was it? It was never there.
It's Newcastle saw a player that they really wanted, or that Eddie Howe really wanted, and tried to sign him.
I suppose this is the mentality. The money is always there, actually. You can spend as much as you like, but you have to accept the consequences of that
Of
spend.
spending, yes.
You have to say, I'm going to go and spend all that, but I know there is a red line saying I have to get to. If I spend X amount, I have to get X amount of sales to negate what we've just done.
Yeah.
And that was what the situation was with Gay. They weren't sitting there. There isn't a pot. There isn't a bank account. They're not logging into their bank app and saying, "Oh, there's 60 million quid with Mark Gay's name on it." It isn't that.
No.
It's
not savings.
No, it's not the savings account, is it? They're not sitting there. They're not sitting on their backside thinking, right, well, we've got 60 million. We're not going to spend it. Well, they're not miserly in that respect. No. It is. They would have done Gay by the sounds of it because they seen him as a high-end quality player, very, very much in the way that they tried to do the Isak one, where it was, look, he's much more expensive than we wanted to pay for a striker, and we never anticipated doing this, but we can get him. Wilson got injured, we're going to do it. Gay was very similar to that.
Yeah.
They seen he was available, well, seemingly available. Everybody agreed, a top-class player. And look, I'm not going to buy into all this rubbish I see on social media as well. He has a bad game, he makes a mistake, whatever, this kind of stuff. And people are like, oh, I don't regret not signing him. Mark Gay comes into Newcastle's team, and I bet he is excellent. I bet you would have had an excellent season. He's a top-class player, really good. Not top level, but is a Premier League performer. Would have really complemented what Newcastle already have in their back four, and would have done well. But the money isn't really there to have done it.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's always there, but you've always got to. It's almost like dipping into an overdraft.
Yeah. My message, me and Jordan spoke about this. If the Mark Gay money was to be spent, I just felt like it could have been better invested in the right winger, which has been a problem area for Newcastle for a long time, and now they're going to weaken that position. And Jacob Murphy, don't write off his form because it's been excellent, but is it just a purple patch, or is he there to stay and continue performing? But that right wing position needs to be addressed in some way, whether it be January or whether it be the summer. But it looks like, based on what Eddie Howe was saying, it's probably not going to be this month.
I've got to be honest, Tom. The most pressing thing in this squad, and I've kind of been saying it for quite some time, is they need a striker. You can get anybody to probably do a job for you in right wing and do what Jacob Murphy does. Maybe he's not the assist output, but you can get somebody to tuck in, to be in good shape, to work hard. You can probably get somebody to do that. You can't get many people to do what goal scorers do. And if Alexander Isak gets injured in this squad, there isn't anybody can physically take his position. I even say Tonali's irreplaceable. I said that earlier. You could get Bruno to tuck back in there, and you could bring Mile in. You can do bits to probably. They won't play the same. They won't look the same. Lewis Hall's similar. There isn't anybody like Lewis Hall, but you could probably get a couple of games out of Kelly and get Target up fit again, and probably get a few games out of him, or even shift. I mean, it might not be nice, but shift Dan Burn out there and bring centre off. You could probably do bits. You can function. Without Alexander Isak, the whole team has to get ripped up, because Anthony Gordon moves out where he's the best left winger in the country at the minute. He has to go centre forward, and then because he won't play a Sula, he doesn't seemingly doesn't trust him to play at that level yet. And there's reasons as to why, and we've kind of seen it. He's got good flashes and not so good. Then you have to suddenly move Joe Linton out from the best midfield three that everybody's talking about all over the country. You have to almost rip the whole team up if Alexander Isak goes.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the biggest problem. I do think they need a starting right winger, because I think Jacob Murphy is a very good player and he's been good for Newcastle, but you want to improve, and if you want to improve, it's an
your
obvious
starting
area.
11. Yeah, I think Newcastle, like what you've just said, the feeling is it's like a house of cards at the moment. Like it looks
does
very
feel like
impressive, but one thing and then it all falls apart. And Isak is probably that thing. But what I'd say on a striker in January, who do you find who is willing to basically be a number 2, potentially a number 3? I mean, you can say what you want about Callum Wilson. He is going to be there or thereabouts in a few weeks' time.
Is he?
How long is he going to stay fit? You're done with him. But
I love him.
I'm
love
just
him, by
saying,
the way,
if your
but
player,
his body is just letting him down.
yes, but if you're a player coming in who has ability, you're probably starting games at another club. Would you come in to be a second fiddle to Alexander Isak for the foreseeable future unless he gets injured? You're coming in basically banking on Callum Wilson not being fit and Alexander Isak being injured in order to get games.
No, they're all valid points and they all make absolute sense, but realistically, when we're talking about positions, I think that's the one. I don't think you can probably go and get, you're probably better off getting your striker in the summer, but if you would ask me what I think the major pressing position is, it is that. Because I think you need somebody of a better level and somebody ready to come in and play games. If Alexander Isak misses a game or needs a game off, you need somebody to come in and play at a certain level, and they haven't got that at the minute. Callum Wilson was that man, but he hasn't been that man for 2 years. And there needs to be some really hard conversations about certain players. He's one of them. I know I get this, how they've got, I seen, was it the Athletic reporting? He's got a year, you can do another year, the club can trigger it. I'm not an expert, but I don't know what they should do in that respect. I mean, are you really going to lumber yourself with a decent, really decent earner for another year who isn't going to play games, and then just kick that can of signing a player that you absolutely need down the road again? I'm just not sure it's worth doing. I get the financial arguments of saying, dear, you can get somebody to come in and pay a little bit of money for him. Is anybody going to pay money for a player who doesn't play games?
Yeah.
So
how much value does he really hold?
No.
I think the time to sell Callum Wilson, again in hindsight, was after his very good season.
And we wouldn't have sold him.
No, we wouldn't.
We wouldn't have sold him standing here, so we're not sitting here like as Captain Hindsight, as some daft he was called us the other day. Realistically, we were not armed with all of the information. Had we been armed with all of the information, then we probably would have done it. And that's the frustrating thing and I think the club have realised that they had to have done it. When there's a sweet spot with these players, and I thought Newcastle had missed the sweet spot with Miguel Almiron. It looks like they've managed to get one. They've got a decent amount of money for a lad who's been a decent performer who isn't really contributing to the team at the moment.
Yeah.
So you take the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Another player also linked this week, Lloyd Kelly, Fenerbahce, bid made, bid rejected. Sounds like he'll be staying at the club, and Eddie Howe sort of reinforced that point this morning. He did mention Fenerbahce. He said they're driving this transfer narrative, with their vice president coming out saying we're looking to sign Lloyd Kelly. He's a player who will join the club if we can reach an agreement with Newcastle. Eddie Howe basically saying, that's their narrative. They're driving Lloyd Kelly. Okay, maybe disappointed with his lack of games, but he's only recently signed for the club. Still part of his future plans, obviously.
Yeah, look, the manager I know him better than anybody. The manager signed him. He's been with him. He sees him every day. We've not seen in black and white anything to, in my opinion, warrant any kind of figure in the region of 10, 11 million quid, if it's even that. I doubt it is. They pay with a bag of buttons and a 10 pence mix up when you sign players in Turkey. Half the players don't even get paid properly. It's one of those that any rumour or any transfer interest from Turkey, you genuinely take with a huge pinch of salt.
Yeah.
It's obviously genuine.
Yeah.
And realistically, I've not seen enough, in my opinion, to say I would definitely keep him. But how's the manager? I think it's actually probably less, in terms of squad dynamic, it's probably less risky getting rid of somebody than Miguel Almiron. But like I say, the takers have got to be there. They don't want to be seen to be fleeced as well. I mean, they'll know the true value of the player. They might be looking, saying, look, he hasn't been quite right so far, or there might be reasons, or he just hasn't had a run to show. But they might be looking, saying, well, he's a £25 million player. I mean, he looks like a £5 million. He just looks like a squad filler, really, at Newcastle United. But he might be better than that. We haven't seen it. We could be having a conversation in 2 years' time where an injury crisis, God forbid, comes in and he plays 10, 15 games on the bounce. You can see why they signed him.
Yeah.
But he hasn't had that, so it's not really fair to judge a player in that respect. I'm not judging him as a footballer. I can only judge what I've seen in black and white, and I haven't really been that impressed by what I've seen in black and white.
Yeah.
So if you were to ask me now, again, not armed with all the information, ask me to suddenly say, would you take £6 million for Lloyd Kelly? I'd probably say, got him for now in the summer, flip him on, £6 million, he's on good wages. Yeah, I probably would, but I don't know the dynamic. I don't know how much headroom that creates in PSR because of fees paid, etc. I know he didn't pay a fee, but there are other fees involved in these deals. And I don't see him every day in training. I haven't got a detailed knowledge. We're journalists. We're not statisticians. We're not club scouts.
No.
So
I mean, you look like you could be a scout.
I am a scout. I'm going for a haircut. That's why I got my cap on.
Right.
We did try and do a first video, and I took the cap off, but then my hair was blown about, and I looked like something. I don't know.
You can't go there.
I look like an oddball.
Yeah, that oddball is a more PC way to put it.
It is.
But yeah, Lloyd Kelly set to stay, Miguel Almiron set to leave by the sounds of it. Just quickly on the injury front, Fabian Schar was ill. I say injury front, illness front. Fabian Schar was ill against Wolves, didn't play. Eddie Howe said he's back in training but not 100%, so a late call will be made on him. What that sounds like to me, reading between the lines, is Sven Botman starts against Bournemouth on Saturday.
I didn't think Botman was great the other day.
Oh.
But I still think he's the man. I think if you've basically signed, even whether Shar's fit or not, I'll probably persist with Botman, even though I didn't think he was great the other night.
I mean, he's kept a clean sheet. What did you not like about him?
I just didn't think he was as comfortable as what I thought he was. I thought that Arsenal game, it was a different kind of game. It was a backs to the wall job, and it was a different dynamic. I thought in that game he was outstanding. I thought the Tottenham game, I thought he had a really shaky first 20, but to be expected, having not played, and we're still talking about a lad who hasn't played a lot of football. So, but I didn't think he was great the other day, and I'm not certain he's as comfortable as, say, Schar playing on the left. Botman playing on the right isn't as comfortable. But you signed Sven Botman to replace Dan Burn or Fabian Schar or Jamal Lascelles. So to me, it would be silly to not be turning to him when he's fit and ready to play, and you want to build that fitness up. And it might be good, the amount of games that can get into him now, when the real business end of the season, fingers crossed, if Newcastle can make it to a cup final, if they can go deep in the FA Cup, and if they can be fighting for the Champions League, you want Sven Botman coming into his own, having 10, 15 games under his belt, 10 games under his belt when the business end of the season comes around. So I would just keep playing him.
Yeah, I would too. And Bournemouth tomorrow, obviously, early kick-off. You don't like games against Bournemouth, don't you?
I hate it. I hate early kick-offs. I really do. I think it just spoils the whole match day dynamic. As a fan, I hated them. I hated having to set.
Never quite as
look, it's a weekend.
Buzzing.
I'm not a morning person at the best of times.
Well, you're here today,
which
is appreciated.
I am. I was up. I had the school run this morning,
so
that's why I was up already, and I'm on a day off. So I was like, I'll come along. I'll do the video. But it spoils the whole dynamic as a fan. It was like you set your alarm early. You're almost bringing forward everything that you would normally have. There's a routine and there's a feel about a 3 o'clock or even a later one. You don't mind pushing it back a little bit. You might have an extra hour in bed. You might do something with your day before you go to the match, or start on the bevy, or go for something to eat, or meet your family, or meet your friends, or whatever you do on a match day. I just think it ruins it. Yes, you get the bit after, but
I like that.
Do you prefer that? I don't.
From a working perspective, I prefer it. I've touched on it in our previous video. I like being able to, 5 o'clock comes, usually you'd be dead in your work, press conference coming up, 5 o'clock comes tomorrow, we'll be like, right, do you want to go for a pint? Or meet up with your mates who
are you going for a pint tomorrow?
I'm dry, but...
Oh, you aren't you?
Boring.
Yeah,
but we'll go.
This is frustrating me, Doc. I keep asking him, we'll go for a pint. He's like, I'll go for a pint with you. Oh, you're not drinking, are you? No.
Boring.
It's frustrating me, this.
Hey, 30 soon. Got to keep me health in check.
Having gone over that hill, it's tough getting back up it.
So yeah, Bournemouth obviously always a tough game for Eddie Howe as well. We'll quickly brush on that. 5 Premier League games, 4 draws, 1 defeat. seems if you're looking for 10 games, 10 wins, making history for Newcastle United, it's a bogey team Eddie Howe will have to get past.
I just think they're a good side. I haven't seen them quite a few times
Top
this season.
manager.
I really rate him. I think he's fantastic. I think the dynamic he's brought there, the way that they play, they've got similarities to the way that Newcastle United play.
Eddie Howe mentioned that.
Did he?
Yeah.
I should have done my research. I should have watched the press conference before I come and talk to you about it.
Jordan's watched the press conference. He was
Jordan
like,
wasn't
oh,
even
well,
here. He wasn't
yeah.
even here. No, I mean, he's right. He'll know more than me, obviously.
Yeah.
But having seen them, they play very similar. They have quite a, I would say, and teams in the middle section of the Premier League, I would say only Brentford can compete in terms of like dynamic front line. That's going to give you all kinds of problems. Cliver, I wasn't sure about when he signed. Scores goals, he contributes. They've been playing Ouattara, who's full of movement, and there's a few of those players in that forward. Semenyo, there's a few of those players that they're like decent. They're decent football on. I would say they can give you big problems on a transition, big problems on a break, and they did that in Newcastle last year. I think they probably did it the year before as well. There's been big problems, but look, I think in recent times the way our team is playing. The confidence that's brimming through that team. I didn't go to Old Trafford with any fear. I didn't go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with any fear. I'm not going to say I was 100% confident going to the Emirates, but the team didn't go with any fear.
No.
So there's nothing to fear playing Bournemouth at St James's Park.
No. And we'll be there, joined by Jordan Cronin, so back as a trio.
Yeah.
Always good to see. But as we all know, every Geordie Journos video sponsored by Mitigate.
Mitigate enhances workplace mental health, helping businesses stay compliant, reduce absences and unlock higher productivity, creating healthier, happier teams. And of course, Geordie Journos has been sponsored by one of the OG sponsors, Four Rivers Financial Planning. Four Rivers Financial Planning offer holistic financial advice for all stages of life, ensuring your plan remains robust and adaptable in the ever-changing world that we live in.
So that's Four Rivers and Mitigate. Links to them in the description, as well as the Geordie Journos shop if you want a bit of merchandise. Joke with Jordan, but he should turn up with his Geordie Journos hoodie to the press conference. But
he's yet to do it, isn't he? I've got a T-shirt in the house.
You could have turned up with that today.
I should have. That would have looked a bit odd.
Yeah, maybe there's the match tomorrow.
Maybe.
Right, but we'll be there. And if you like what we do, please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe and ring the bell for all your Geordie Journos content. Been a busy year so far, a lot of videos, but thank you so much for tuning into them all and watching. Comment below. Let us know how would you line up for Newcastle tomorrow, because at the moment the team is almost picking itself, and we'll be interested to know your thoughts. Does Fabian Schar come back in? Nick Pope's obviously still out and Martin Dubravka keeps his place, but do you change anything further forward on the pitch? Because at the moment, the team's doing very well.
And the thoughts on transfers as well. I think that's a big talking point.
Do you sell Miguel Almiron? Do you sell Lloyd Kelly? Or do you keep hold of them?
Maybe we'll address that more a bit in the next video as well when we talk.
Yeah, there'll definitely be updates to come over on Geordie Journos, so thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.